I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So exhibits 1 through 8 are physical substantive evidence. That's what I needed the gloves on to get in and actually look at. I have not had a chance to look at those. Exhibit number 9 is labeled scene video. Assuming upon Mr. Vu's representation that that's the video that was provided to the defense in discovery, we would stipulate to that exhibit's admissibility. Exhibits 10 through 49 are pictures, and we would be willing to stipulate their admissibility upon the state's stipulation that our proposed exhibits 62, 63, 64, and 65, which is evidence contained in the discovery packet, is also admissible. And then we have a few concerns with item 50, and then with item 60. And then items 51 through 59, and as well as 61, we would not object to.
So just so I'm clear, 9 through 49 are agreed?
As long as the state does not object to us to ours 62, 63, 64, and 65.
The state does not object to 63, 64, and 65. I would ask what the purpose would be for 62, and at this point, I don't think we need to discuss in detail, but at this point, because it is a document, and it's not a photograph, and there are contents within that document that may or may not be relevant.
Well, why don't we do this? I'd like to get the jury started on time. We're past 1:30 now anyway, so why don't we hold off on this? We'll formalize the stipulation at a break time when it's more convenient.
Okay.
Right, thank you. Let's bring the jury in then, please. Parties ready for opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thanks, Your Honor.
And to the extent either party's intending to use any visuals or demonstratives during opening, I assume those have been cleared and the opposing counsel have been advised?
We're not using any exhibits, Your Honor.
The defense isn't planning on it either.
Thank you. Yeah, you should remain in the same order. That'll keep things easiest. Look to your left and to your right so you know who's on either side of you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your promptness. Hopefully you were able to find local lunch spots near the courthouse. You can ask Dorothy or Rhonda if you're needing some recommendations on that. We're now ready to begin with opening statements, so I'll ask you to please give your attentions to Mr. Vu, who will give opening on behalf of the state. And don't forget the microphone there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Counsel? Members of the jury? June 10th, 2013 is and will always be the day that changed the life of Justin Carey forever. Before 7 o'clock that morning, Justin Carey was your typical, ordinary, normal 16-year-old high school kid. He woke up that morning, prepared to go to school, got dressed, got his backpack, walked down to the end of his driveway where he waited for the school bus to pick him up to go to school. Just after 7 o'clock, in an instant, his life forever changed. And not for the good. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about the conduct, the choices, the actions of the defendant, Sean Johnson. Sean Johnson drove that morning, June 10th, 2013. She was apparently on her way to work. At just after, or just around 7 o'clock that morning, she was driving on Northeast 82nd Avenue, approaching 289th Street. She went off the road, traveled approximately 117 feet off the road in the ditch, struck Justin Carey as he's standing on the side of the road waiting for the school bus to pick him up, launched him over 80 feet away into thick, dense brush. Her car essentially did a, can you all imagine the Dukes of Hazzard type of scenario? Similar to that, but not quite obviously as that extreme. But her car went up the embankment, if you will, and landed on the other side of 289th Street and ended up in the ditch alongside of Northeast 82nd Avenue. And this is a location in the rural part of Clark County, okay, central North Clark County in Battleground. Two people were traveling behind Sean Johnson that morning. Karen Nelson and Mark Bulldozer were some distance behind her. The speed limit on that road is 50 miles per hour. It's a county road, rural Clark County, and they were traveling behind her. They were on their way to work. And what caught their attention was ahead of them, they saw this plume of smoke. Dust, smoke, whatever it was. It was just a plume. And when they arrived on it, just moments after they saw that, that's when they saw the defendant's vehicle in the ditch. Karen Nelson swung around, parked her truck, got out, and went down to check on the driver. The driver, as it turns out, was Sean Johnson. She was still sitting behind the wheel of her car. She was the only occupant in the vehicle. She was by herself. No one else was there. And she said that, she was hurt. Mark Bulldozer, like I said, also saw the smoke, dust, whatever, also stopped and provided assistance. In fact, it was Mark's phone. Strike that. I think it was Karen's phone that was used to call 911 because Mark's phone, Mr. Bullgozer's phone, didn't have very good reception out there. In any event, they both lended assistance to Sean Johnson. They called 911. The police were dispatched, paramedics, fire department, the whole works. And approximately 7:07 a.m. was when Deputy Tim Gosh from the Clark County Sheriff's Office was dispatched to the scene. He arrived there just before 7:30 in the morning. Rural Clark County. It took him a while to get there, but he got there. When he got there, what he saw was the defendant still in the back, is still in the driver's seat of her car, and paramedics had arrived, or ambulance or AMR. So they removed her from the vehicle, and the medics were taking care of her, treating her, figuring out what was wrong. It appeared that she had a broken right arm. Now, Deputy Gosh is a patrol deputy, and he responds to 911 calls and vehicle crashes and things like that. So when he arrived there, the only information he had was that it was a single vehicle off-the-road crash with one occupant. So that was in his mind, and that's what he saw. In the process of him trying to document the crash, that's what you do as a police officer, is you document crashes, he reached into the defendant's purse to retrieve her driver's license, documents, and things like that. And what he saw or discovered when he reached into her purse were two small plastic baggies that contained a crystal substance. Based upon his training and experience and dealing with, people who have been arrested, charged, prosecuted for methamphetamine, recognized the substance to be methamphetamine. So with that, Deputy Gosh asked Sean Johnson, who was now sitting in the back of the ambulance, "Hey, what's your drug use history?" Because the paramedics are still treating her and they're about to give her pain medication. And obviously, you don't want drug interaction or reaction. It could be life-threatening, perhaps even fatal. So he answered that. And in the course of talking to her and finding out her history, the defendant admitted to Deputy Gosh that she was an addict. And that the last time that she used methamphetamine was Saturday, 2 days prior. Okay, June 10, 2013, if I forgot to mention, was a Monday. Okay. So 2 days ago, she admitted that she had used methamphetamine. Deputy Gosh, at this point, still was of the impression that it was a single vehicle crash. We have a driver who's injured, so he collected up all the documents, the plastic baggies of suspected methamphetamine, and then arranged for a tow to tow Ms. Johnson's car, because you can't leave the car on the side, in a ditch. So he waited around for the tow person, the tow truck driver, to arrive to tow the car. And in the meantime, filling out his paperwork and getting ready, things like that. Charles, I think his last name is Barrett, Charles Barrett, was dispatched. He was the tow truck driver, dispatched out there to tow Ms. Johnson's car. Got there, he obviously saw the vehicle had crashed. It was in a ditch. He had one of those big, long flatbeds. So he hooked her vehicle up and pulled it out, had it all secured, ratcheted it down and stuff like that on the back of his flatbed, and made preparations to tow it to his tow yard. In the meantime, Deputy Gosh is there and got the paperwork information and provided to the tow truck driver. And then Deputy Gosh then left because he had another call. So he took off. Well, Charles Barrett, after making preparations to haul away the defendant's car, was picking up all the pieces from underneath her car that had broken, the front undercarriage, the front bumper, things like that had fallen. To pick up those pieces, collect them, and then make one final sweep before he left. It was a great thing that he did, because in his final sweep of the area, as he's getting ready to leave, he hears this faint moan, groan. Somebody, not quite yelling, but saying, "Help, help." Mark Barrett investigated where the sound was coming from. He crashed through the thick brush, and lo and behold, about 5 to 10 feet away from where the defendant's car had been was Justin Carey. Justin Carey had just regained consciousness. This was approximately 90 minutes after the crash. Justin Carey came to, and he was obviously not all there. Okay, he had been unconscious for approximately 90 minutes, had taken the brunt of the defendant's vehicle strike on his body, and was launched over 80 feet away. He was confused. He made just various statements that didn't make sense. In any event, Charles Barrett realized, holy Toledo, I have a situation on my hand. He then called 911 to report, hey, that crash I responded to tow, I got somebody here who was involved in that crash and seriously injured. So Deputy Gosh, who was responding to the second call, got the same dispatch again and said, hey, you got to go back. So Deputy Gosh then returned to the crash scene. Ambulance, medical, all those people were also dispatched out there. Deputy Gosh got back to the scene, and he identified Justin Carey as the 16-year-old male who had been struck by the defendant's vehicle, and that he was not good. His legs were all messed up, upper body, blood, things like that. So Justin Carey was life flighted to what used to be Southwest Medical Center. It's now Peace Health. So he was taken there, and like I said, that was on June 10th, 2013. He stayed in the hospital for 28 days, 4 weeks of his life in the hospital. The hospital staff tried to save his leg. You will hear from Cassandra Sappington, the physician assistant who did the discharge summary, the discharge paperwork, when Justin Carey was discharged. And she'll describe to you all the injuries that Justin Carey sustained, all the medical procedures that he underwent. Bottom line was that Justin Carey had multiple broken bones in both his legs, his femur, and because of the approximately 90 minutes that he was out there in the bushes with his injured right leg, blood flow didn't get to his foot, and essentially it died, and his leg was amputated from just above the knee. Now, so those are just the facts of what happened in this case in regards to the vehicle strike that Justin Carey received. After Deputy Gosh returned to the scene and saw Justin Carey in that condition, he obviously realized we have a more serious situation here that could arise to the level of criminal conduct. He then called his sergeant and other officers, including Detective Todd Young, who is assigned to the traffic unit. Okay? And the traffic unit you hear is responsible for investigating all the serious crashes involving injuries and death and things like that. So Detective Young responded out to the scene and did his investigation. You will learn about everything that he did, including taking measurements of where all the evidence was deposited or left. Tire marks, distance, length, all that. Okay? And he'll explain to you all of his mathematical formulas and calculations that he did to determine at approximately what speed the defendant was traveling when she impacted and struck Justin Carey. How far she traveled before she struck him, how far he was launched, where his backpack was, his shoes were, all that stuff. And he documented all that by way of video as well as photographs. And you'll see all that. So while Detective Young was dealing with the technical aspect of the investigation, the crash itself, Detective Chris Luque was dispatched or sent to the hospital to contact the defendant to figure out whether or not she was impaired. She was under the influence, or what caused her to go off the road at 7 o'clock in the morning and cause this serious injury to this young man. Deputy Chris Luque is a trained and certified, what we call drug recognition expert, or DRE for short. And he'll explain to you his training to become a drug recognition expert and what they do. In summary, they are police officers who have specialized training to detect all the signs, manifestations, demeanor, things like that, for people who have ingested a wide variety of drugs, and they're able to narrow down across the array of all the drugs that can affect you, that are, quote, psychoactive, and narrow it down to certain drug categories. So, for example, the signs and symptoms for impairment by alcohol is different from marijuana, it's different from heroin, it's different from methamphetamine, things like that. Okay, so there are 7 different types of drug categories that they are trained to detect signs that people exhibit if they have used those drugs. Before he became a police officer, Detective Luque was a trained emergency medical technician, EMT. So he has additional medical training prior to becoming a police officer. He drove, ambulances and responded to crashes. So he's got that additional background, training, and experience in the medical field also. And he's been a detective for a number of years and has investigated people for drug use, drug distribution, obviously vehicle crashes and things like that. He's evaluated a bunch of people for different types of drugs. So what he did when he got to the hospital was, first of all, he got a summary from Detective Young as well as Deputy Gosh about what had happened or why he was there, who he was going to contact, things like that. So he got a base summary of the facts of this incident. So when he arrived at the hospital, he contacted the defendant, Sean Johnson, who was sitting in a hospital room at Peace Health. And that was approximately just after 10 o'clock in the morning. So it had been approximately 3 hours after the crash. Okay? So he introduced himself to the defendant and advised her what he was there for. Since it was going to be going into a criminal investigation, he advised her of her constitutional rights, what's now commonly referred to as Miranda warnings. And those are the rights that you hear on TV that everyone should know about. You have the right to remain silent, you have the right to have a lawyer, yada, yada, yada. And the defendant acknowledged her rights. She waived her rights and agreed to speak with Detective Luque. So Detective Luque then asked her a number of questions about, who she is, or who she was, who she worked for, what happened, and where does she live, things like that. Now, the whole point of this contact by Detective Luque is so that he can have the opportunity to evaluate her, see her reaction time to questions, see if she's, responsive to him, see if she's, following him as he, moves around, see if she's attentive, see if she's alert, awake, can follow, directions, things like that. And he did notice certain things. And like I said, because he is trained to detect certain clues that people exhibit when they are under the influence of drugs, various types of drugs, he's able to pick up those clues that ordinary people may not be able to, because we're not focused on that. We're not looking for those things. In any event, so he's picking up these clues, and then he asked the defendant to submit to what's called standardized field sobriety tests. Okay, and you will learn what they are. They're the tests that you commonly see people perform either on the side of the road in a DUI situation, or on TV, YouTube or whatever. But because of the defendant's physical condition, she was hurt. She was hooked up to machines in the hospital, and her arm was broken. She's not able to perform the physical parts of that test. Walking a straight line, and things like that. So Detective Luque was only able to check her eyes for what's called nystagmus. And you will learn what that is all about. And so after doing all of these tests and observing her blood pressure, her heart rate, because that's all hooked up to the monitors at the hospital, seeing how she was behaving. Oh, and by the way, Detective Luque learned that the defendant had been given two pretty potent pain medication. In particular, fentanyl and, I'm asking this right, Dilaudid. Okay, so these two are pretty potent pain medication that are given to patients who have pain. It's to help them deal with pain, obviously. And based upon his medical training and experience, as well as his training and experience in the drug recreation area, Detective Luque was expecting the defendant to exhibit certain symptoms or certain signs based upon the types of medication that she had received. Okay? Those medications are opiate-based. They fall under the category of narcotic analgesics. Okay, same thing with cocaine, things like that. So Detective Luque was looking for certain signs that a person who was only who had only been given that type of medication would exhibit. What he saw was different from what he was expecting. What he saw was what's called antagonistic effects that the defendant was exhibiting, including her eyes dilation or lack thereof, and her mannerisms, things like that. So what he was able to conclude based upon what he observed and what he expected to see and what he did see was that there was something else in the defendant's system that was pulling her away from what the pain medication should have shown. He'll explain all that to you. So after doing all that, Detective Luque then was able to obtain a search warrant for the defendant's blood. Okay, so he went through the formal process, got a judge to listen to his application, and was authorized a blood draw to obtain 2 vials of her blood for it to be tested by the toxicology laboratory. And that's what he did. After obtaining the blood from the defendant, that blood, the defendant's blood vials, were sent to the crime lab. I'm sorry, the toxicology lab. That's part of the state crime lab for testing. Asa Lewis is a staff toxicologist that works out of the toxicology lab up in Seattle. He'll explain to you his process, procedures for testing the contents of blood, all his qualifications, all that stuff. And he'll explain to you what machines he used, what he did, the protocols that were followed, things like that. And ultimately, what Asa Lewis found in his analysis of the defendant's blood was that it did contain methamphetamine. Okay. The defendant's blood did contain methamphetamine. Remember the 2 plastic baggies that Deputy Gosh found in the defendant's purse? Those 2 bags were sent to our crime lab here to be tested also. And Bruce Siggins, who is the supervising chemist here at our crime lab, tested the contents of those plastic baggies, the crystal substance. And he'll explain to you his methodologies, his protocols, his procedures, his equipment, everything that he did to analyze the contents of those plastic baggies. And what he found in his analysis was that the crystal substance inside the baggies contained methamphetamine. All right, so y'all getting the pieces now? The picture, the pieces of the puzzle are all fitting, okay? The defendant drove a vehicle in Clark County, Washington on June 10, 2013. She was under the influence of methamphetamine, went off the road, struck Justin Carey, caused not just substantial bodily injury, but way beyond substantial bodily injury, serious, life-threatening injury, while she was under the influence of a controlled substance, in this case, methamphetamine. In addition, she had methamphetamine with her, in her possession. That is a separate crime in the state of Washington. So, after the investigation, Sean Johnson was charged with those 2 crimes. Okay? There was some additional follow-up investigation by Detective Young in regards to whether or not she knew she had hit somebody, things like that. But as it turns out, we were unable to find evidence of that. Okay? So she was charged with those two crimes, vehicular assault and possession of controlled substance methamphetamine. She was brought to court, formally charged, was arraigned, bail was set, she had an attorney, she posted bail, and when bail is posted and a person is released pending the case resolving or pending trial, a judge sets out what are called release conditions. Okay? And you will learn from a couple of colleagues from my office, okay, who handled the court proceedings that took place. And they'll explain to you, the purpose behind these what's called release orders, release conditions, why they're on conditions of release, why we have these documents to make sure that people show up to court for various court proceedings. You learn all that. You hear all that. So, Ms. Johnson, like I said, was in court, was advised of her conditions of her release pending trial, and one of the basic conditions of her release is that she come back to court when she's supposed to, when she is given notice that, and she knows that she has a court hearing on her case, on this case, and that if she doesn't appear, then she could be facing more legal consequences. Okay? So, what happened was in September 2014, and I forget the date, but you'll see the document, and you'll see some of the video also, where the defendant was in court, in a different courtroom from this one. Actually, it's on the other side of the hallway. She was in front of Judge Collier, and she was there with her lawyer, Mr. Bogar. And at that time, a trial date was set with other dates that she had to show up for, including what's called a readiness hearing date, and then what's called a suppression hearing / omnibus hearing date. And these were all mandatory dates that she had to appear. And it's written on what's called the scheduling order. And it has places where people sign acknowledging that they receive the information, receive the document, receive the order, so that there's no questions. Okay? So remember, she was still under the court's release order with the condition to return to court when she's supposed to. So, on November 17, 2014, she was supposed to return to Judge Gregerson's courtroom, this judge here, but at that time he was in a different courtroom, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in this same building for what's called a suppression hearing / omnibus hearing. And you will learn that everyone who was supposed to be there showed up except for you-know-who, the defendant. Judge was there, clerk was there, I was there, Deputy Goss was there, Mr. Bogar was there, and there was an empty seat where Ms. Johnson was supposed to show up. We waited around for almost half an hour, close to 3:30 when the case was called, waiting for her to show up, and she never showed Ladies and gentlemen, that is the third charge that she is facing, is bail jumping. So that's what this case is about. That's what this trial is about, is the defendant's conduct, actions, and choices that she made in this case that forever changed Justin Carey's life. Justin Carey was a regular 16-year-old high school kid. He had dreams. He had aspirations. He was going to join the army. He was going to serve his country. 7 o'clock on June 10, 2013, his dreams, his wishes, his plans were crushed in the impact that the defense car had with his body. He will never be able to do what he had planned on doing. His life is now forever changed. At the end of this case, after hearing all of the testimony from the witnesses that we talked about, looking at the evidence that will be admitted in this case, I will come back and will ask you to consider everything that you have heard, seen, observed, and render the only just verdict in this case, which is to find the defendant guilty of the crimes that she's charged with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vu. Now if you'll transfer the microphone over to Mr. Bogert. We'll take just a minute here, ladies and gentlemen. Take a couple of deep breaths. I'm assuming you do wish to give an opening statement, Mr. Bogert?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, then please now give your attentions to Mr. Bogert, who will give opening statement for Ms. Johnson.
Ladies and gentlemen, what happened to Justin is an absolute tragedy. He was 16 years old. He was standing at the bus stop. He was probably playing on his phone, listening to electronic dance music. And he woke up in the hospital. It wasn't his fault. He did not do anything wrong. He wanted to go into the military. Mr. Booth served, I've served. He can't. He lost his leg, and that is not his fault. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not all this case is about. The charge is not, was there a collision? Did a car go into a ditch? Did Justin Carey lose his leg? That's not the charge. The charge is vehicular assault, DUI. State alleging that she had methamphetamine in her system when she was driving. So while the defense is not disputing the substantial nature of Justin's injuries, there's much more to the case. When Deputy Gosh got to the scene, he took charge of the scene. He found the substance in her bag. He talked to her. He took her statements. He walked around the scene. He saw where the crash occurred. Ladies and gentlemen, after hearing all of that, the statements about use, she had admitted she'd used about 40 hours earlier the previous Saturday.
Deputy Gosh's conclusion, that time, that point, when he had everything but Justin's injury, was that no crime had occurred. It wasn't a criminal investigation. He did not arrest her for DUI. He found the substance. He heard her statements. No arrest. He didn't write up a ticket for reckless driving, which is also a crime, or negligent driving. Nothing. He left the scene. And yes, he had to go to another call. But ladies and gentlemen, DUI is a serious crime. He knew about people like Detective Luque. Detective Luque is a drug recognition expert. He did not call Detective Luque before they found Justin and tell him, meet the ambulance at the hospital. He did not call Deputy Young. Say, come out and look at the scene. We want to see what actually happened. He determined that there was not a crime. Now, when Detective Luque got to the hospital, he is a drug recognition expert. And that is a very complex, long program that renders law enforcement officers the ability to give conclusions about whether somebody's under the influence of a substance. In order to render such a conclusion, they have to go through a 12-step process, the DRE protocol. He didn't do the protocol. And part of being a DRE, ladies and gentlemen, is that you've got to put your credentials on the line. You have to make an opinion call, and your opinion calls have to be right as validated by blood evidence. You've got to make a call. That person is under the influence of heroin or cocaine or methamphetamines. And then they test the blood, and you got to be right. And if you're not right, your credentials become in jeopardy. Ladies and gentlemen, Detective Luque, after meeting with Ms. Johnson, after interviewing her, after she waived her right to remain silent, after she offered a blood sample, he did not render a conclusion. He did not write in the affidavit for a search warrant, I believe she's under the influence of methamphetamines based on my training and experience. No conclusion. He didn't write it in his police reports. He did not conclude that she was under the influence of methamphetamines when he spoke with her. And he spoke with her almost 3 hours after the crash. We're not exactly sure what time she was transported to the hospital in the ambulance, but she was without law enforcement supervision. She waived her right to remain silent. She offered her blood. He interviewed her. He took notes. He did not put his credentials on the line. Even with the statements. Even with the substance allegedly found at the scene. No credentials on the line. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's Deputy Young. He does a great deal of work, good work, on traffic investigations, crash scenes, accident scenes. Ms. Johnson told law enforcement that she was going about 45 miles an hour in an area that has a speed limit of 50, and that she dropped a lit cigarette, reached over to pick it up, and came up in the weeds. Ladies and gentlemen, Deputy Young's conclusion is that she was going about 34 to 45 miles an hour at the point of impact. There is absolutely no evidence that she knew Justin was there. She knew she hit him. Ladies and gentlemen, her story to the police that day, when she talked to Deputy Gosh and Deputy Luque, that's the evidence. 45 miles an hour, reaching over to pick up a lit cigarette that had fallen on some paper. Deputy Gosh did not arrest her for DUI. He left the scene. No crime based on the driving. Deputy Luque didn't put his credentials on the line. Wasn't willing to make the conclusion that she was under the influence of anything. And he's a drug recognition expert. Ladies and gentlemen, as horrific as the injuries to Justin are, I submit by the end of this trial, tears are going to be shed, and rightfully so. I think the question is, what charges have been filed, and what evidence does the state have? What will they be able to prove? Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to show that this was an accident. Accidents sometimes have horrific injuries, horrific results. They're still accidents. Now, ladies and gentlemen, she wasn't in court on November 7th. We're not going to say otherwise. Her mother had gotten sick, had to have surgery. She missed court. She missed court. The questions here: vehicular assault, DUI, methamphetamine. They have to prove vehicular assault part. By the way, there was no DNA found on her car from Justin. They have to prove that she was under the influence when she was driving. And to that, Deputy Luque would not put his credentials on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a tough case. Justin has suffered a horrific injury, and it hurts to see a kid lose his future. Question. Keep an open mind. Listen to the evidence. When it comes back, I'm going to ask you to acquit her on the charge: vehicular assault, DUI, possession of methamphetamine, and you folks are going to make your own decision.
Thank you. And maybe you can give the microphone box back to
Absolutely.
Mr. Vu. And Mr. Vu, do you have your first witness ready?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. State calls Deputy Ken Gosh.
All right, raise your right hand, sir, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in these proceedings is the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please have a seat. State your full name, spell your last name for us.
My name is Timothy Gosh. My last name is spelled G-O-S-C-H.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Please tell the jury who you work for.
I work for the Clark County Sheriff's Office. I'm employed as a deputy sheriff and have been for the last 20 years.
And what do you do as a deputy sheriff for the sheriff's office?
I'm assigned to Central Days A Squad, responsible for patrolling the northeastern portion of the county, doing regular patrol, responding to calls of various types, including traffic and whatever else they send me to.
And you said that the area is northeast county?
Correct.
Okay, what is that? involve?
Basically, my area encompasses everything from the east fork of the Lewis River to the north fork of the Lewis River, and everything from northeast 50th Avenue to Skamania County. I roughly have about 180 square miles to cover.
All right. Now, obviously, you're a police officer, correct?
I'm a deputy sheriff, yes.
All right. And were you on duty back on June 10th, 2013?
Yes, I was.
And what shift were you working that day?
Day shift. The hours are from 6 o'clock in the morning until 5:45 in the evening.
Okay. Do you remember responding to a crash on Northeast 82nd and Northeast 289?
Yes, I do.
Okay. This case?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So please tell the jury how you came to be involved in this case.
I was dispatched to a motor vehicle accident. I was described to, or was included as in the dispatch call, as a single car into the ditch with possible injuries.
And what time did you receive that dispatch?
7:07 in the morning.
Okay. And did you arrive there at that location?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What time did you get there?
It's 7:20. I'm out of order here. 7:26.
Okay. So,
19,
okay.
roughly 19 minutes.
all right, 20 minutes or so. Round numbers.
Okay.
So once you arrived there, were you the first law enforcement officer to arrive at that location?
Yes, I was.
And what did you see when you arrived there?
By the time I arrived on scene, medics and the firefighters were tending to the driver of the vehicle. They were still down in the vehicle and trying to assist the driver.
Okay, so the driver was still inside the vehicle?
Yes, she was still inside the vehicle, sitting in the driver's seat.
All right. And what type of vehicle was it?
I'd have to look at my notes on that. I believe that it was a Nissan.
Okay. Truck, car, what?
A car.
All right. And were there any other occupants in the vehicle besides the driver?
No, there were not.
Okay. And was the driver male or female?
Female.
So what happened after you arrived there and saw all that? What happens next?
Assisted the medics and I began obtaining information to complete an accident report.
Okay. Did you have contact with the driver of the vehicle at that point?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Where did you have contact with the driver?
I'm sorry, where or when?
Where?
Where? I believe my first contact with the driver was prior to her being put into the ambulance. I was obtaining driver's license and looking for other information.
Okay. Did you see any other vehicles involved in this incident, this collision?
No, I did not.
Single vehicle?
It appeared to be a single vehicle accident.
Okay. And you said that the vehicle was down a ditch?
It was down an embankment in a grassy area on the west side of the road.
All right. So if you can describe the area in question for us, the type of road, the area, and whatnot.
Northeast 82nd Avenue is in the 289th block, is a rural area of part of Clark County. The road is straight with rolling hills and ditches on both sides of the roadway. And at that time of year, there's grass, just a few feet off of each side of the roadway for the most part.
How many lanes in each direction?
I'm sorry, the length in each direction?
How many lanes?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a 2-lane roadway, 1 lane in each direction.
Okay, and what direction had the vehicle been traveling?
She was traveling southbound
Southbound on?
on Northeast 82nd Avenue.
Okay. So the vehicle was in a ditch on the west side, you said?
That's correct.
All right. So you were you were trying to document what happened?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and how do you go about doing that?
Through obtaining information, license information, vehicle information, and the proof of insurance so that we can complete an accident report.
Okay, now, were you able to identify the female driver?
Yes, I was.
How were you able to identify her?
Through a driver's license.
Okay, and where was the driver's license?
She had provided me with a driver's license.
Okay, and who was the person on the driver's license?
Sean Johnson.
Okay, was the person depicted on the driver's license the same person that was in front of you?
Yes, it was.
Okay, can you please identify, strike that, do you see that person here in court this
Yes.
afternoon? Can you please identify that person for the jury?
Ms. Sean Johnson is seated at the defendant's table next to her attorney.
And if you can describe an article of clothing she's wearing, because we're recording.
Ms. Johnson has blonde hair. She's wearing a white sweater vest.
Okay,
Long sleeve.
That's fine. Let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
So noted.
So did you have further conversations or contact with the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Okay, describe that.
Ms. Johnson was taken from the vehicle up to an ambulance, and I had additional contact with Ms. Johnson in the ambulance to request additional information where I could locate her registration and a proof of insurance, and also to obtain a driver's license that I had actually given back prior to her being put into the ambulance.
Okay. Now, did you learn what her injuries were?
I was advised she potentially had a broken arm.
Okay. Was she exhibiting signs of being in distress, in pain, or anything like that?
It was obvious that she was in pain at the time she was being treated.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
I would say that she was definitely uncomfortable. They had her arm in a sling, and they were putting an IV in the other arm.
All right. So when you contacted her and tried to locate her documents, did you find anything?
I did. Ms. Johnson, I was advised by the medics that her driver's license was back in her purse, and because she was being treated by the medics, I opened her purse and found her driver's license. And in addition to the driver's license, I also found 2 baggies of methamphetamine.
Okay. Now let's talk about those 2 baggies. You said you're a law enforcement officer, a deputy sheriff for 22 years?
20 years with the Clark County Sheriff's Office, 4.5 years with the Kelso Police Department. In that capacity, I was a reserve officer, but working full-time as a temporary full-time officer.
Okay. Now, in your line of work, have you arrested people for methamphetamine possession?
Yes, I have.
Have you seen methamphetamine in the way it looks and the way it's packaged?
Yes, I have.
Okay. In your experience, the 2 baggies that you saw inside Ms. Johnson's purse, what did they look like?
The baggies contained a crystalline granules. They have a very similar appearance. They could vary anywhere from being brown, pink, blue. These were almost clear granules.
Okay, and had you seen substances like this before?
Yes, I have.
All right. And when you say 2 plastic bags or baggies, can you describe the size of those baggies?
Small Ziploc bags that are approximately 1.5 inches by 2 inch is fairly normal. I'm sorry. Is fairly normal. I believe that the bags were consistent with that as well, the ones that were in her purse.
Okay. And have you seen those size baggies containing those crystal substances in your line of work?
Yes, I have.
In what context?
While working on patrol, also during the drug investigations, making your arrest for possession of methamphetamine.
All right. So did you recognize these 2 baggies as methamphetamine.
Yes, I did.
What did you do with them?
They were seized. Some of the granules were field tested, and they were later placed into evidence.
All right. So, did you have further contact with Ms. Johnson at the scene?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you have any conversations with her?
I did. I inquired with Ms. Johnson about her methamphetamine use, explaining to her that the medics, needed to know what her consumption is and her addictions so that they could properly treat her.
What do you mean by that?
If she's got drugs on board, you certainly wouldn't want the medics giving her medications that could interact or, with the medications. The drugs and the medication may not work together.
Okay. When you say drugs on board, what do you mean by that?
Drugs in her system, in her bloodstream or in her body.
Okay. Were you concerned that Ms. Johnson was about to be given medications by medical personnel at the scene?
Yes, because they had already run an IV.
All right. So when you asked Ms. Johnson that, what did she say to you? What was her response?
Ms. Johnson admitted that she was in fact an addict, and she had most recently used the prior Saturday.
Okay. So did you provide that information to medical personnel?
Yes, they were actually present in there and overheard that conversation.
All right. So let's go back a little bit. All right. Now, let's talk about your training and your experience. Okay. You said you're a patrol deputy, correct?
That's correct.
Do you have any specialized training in the area of drug detection?
As far
as a person exhibiting signs of drug, use, drug impairment, things like that.
I've been through training. I'm not a certified DRE, a drug recognition expert. However, during training, we've received training in recognizing when people are under the influence of drugs in general, but not, I wouldn't know the specific drugs, only the exhibiting the effects of that they could potentially be under the influence of drugs.
Okay. Now, are you trained to investigate and arrest people for driving under the influence of alcohol?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Did you exhibit, strike that, did you detect or observe any signs that Sean Johnson was under the influence of alcohol?
No, I did not.
Okay. And when we say under the influence of alcohol, what are you looking for?
Intoxication, and the odor of alcohol, red glassy eyes, slurred speech, impaired balance.
Okay. And Sean Johnson was not exhibiting those classic alcohol impairment signs, correct?
None at all.
Okay. Did you note or were you looking for any signs of impairment for other drugs on her?
No, I was not. As I stated, I'm not a DRE
All right.
or drug recognition expert.
All right. So what did you do after you collected, the baggies of meth, her driver's license, and provided information to the medics?
I returned to my car. I completed an accident report and a towing impound sheet for the towing company.
And what happened with Ms. Johnson?
Ms. Johnson was transported by ambulance to the hospital.
Okay, for what purpose?
To treatment of her injuries, her broken arm.
All right. So what did you do after the ambulance left?
I stood by and waited for the tow operator to show up. I was there and provided security and traffic control while the tow operator removed the vehicle from the ditch.
Let's go back a little bit. So why did you not arrest Sean Johnson for driving under the influence?
I had no signs that she was driving under the influence. Again, I'm not trained as a drug recognition expert. I was unable to determine if she was driving under the influence of drugs at that time.
Okay. So based upon your observations, you couldn't make any observations?
I had no reason to arrest Ms. Johnson at that time. So.
Okay. So she was taken to the hospital, and you stood around waiting for the tow truck?
Correct.
eventually did the tow truck arrive?
Yes, he did.
Okay, and who was that?
Mr. Charlie Barrett with Clark County Towing.
All right, and when Mr. Barrett arrived, what did you do?
Maintain traffic control so that due to the curvature of the road and the hilly topography, I provided traffic control so that Mr. Barrett had a safe area to work within.
And what did Mr. Barrett do?
He removed the vehicle from the ditch, loaded it onto the back of his vehicle, onto the back of his tow truck, and pulled out of the roadway.
Okay, and at some point did you leave the scene?
I did. After Mr. Barrett had the vehicle securely on the back of his tow truck and he was out of the roadway, I was dispatched to another call.
Okay, and so you left?
I did.
Okay, and who remained at the scene?
Mr. Barrett,
Okay,
the tow operator.
all right. So at some point did you receive another dispatch?
Yes, I did.
Okay, can you tell the jury when you received that dispatch and what that was about?
I had left the scene, and approximately 4 minutes after leaving, I was notified by the dispatcher that the tow operator, Charlie Barrett, had located a person down in the brush and to return to the scene.
Okay, now, what time did you receive that second dispatch? You remember?
I will, afraid I'm going to have to check my notes on that. 8:33.
Okay, and when did you return to the scene? What time?
8:37.
All right. So when you returned, what did you see this time?
I found the medics had already located a young man down in the grassy area near where the vehicle had been removed from, and they were attempting to render aid at that time.
Can you describe that young man?
Young man, I believe he was 16 years old, laying in the grass. The grass was about, 6.5, 7 feet tall, and he was short distance from where the vehicle had been, but due to the tall grass, we weren't able to see him. He had suffered injuries to his lower extremities, his legs, and injuries to his torso.
And was he conscious at that point?
He was conscious at that point, obviously in a great deal of pain.
Okay. Was he making any coherent statements at that point?
I don't believe his statements were coherent. I think that due to his injuries, and he said that he had been involved in a car accident, or he said he'd been driving a car.
Okay. Did that make sense?
No, it was inconsistent with what we were finding.
All right. So you said medics were already there when you arrived on scene?
Correct.
And were they the same medics or ambulance that had transported Sean Johnson, or different?
I don't believe it was the same crew.
That's fine.
We were busy. I didn't get the names. I'm sorry.
Sure, that's fine. So did they tend to strike that? Were you able to identify the young man that was in the brush?
Yes, we were.
And how were you able to identify him?
I believe that he provided his name to the medics. I think he was conscious enough to do that.
Okay, and what was his name?
Justin? I'm sorry again.
That's fine. First name Justin?
Yeah, I've got Justin in my report.
Okay. And what ultimately happened with Justin in terms of at the scene?
And I'm sorry, I missed the paragraph. I actually have Justin identified in the previous paragraph. Mr. Justin Carey. And I'm sorry, the next question?
The question is, what happened with Mr. Carey at the scene?
Mr. Carey was briefly treated by the on-scene medics and then life-flighted from the scene.
To home? To the hospital?
No, to the hospital.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I believe Southwest Washington Medical Center was originally where he was life flighted to.
All right. And from there, what did you do next?
Due to since the investigation had obviously now changed into a potential accident with significant injuries to another party, I contacted a supervisor and the traffic enforcement detectives.
Okay. And what happened after that?
Detectives arrived on scene, and I later went to the hospital while they did their investigation. I later went after they, I don't know, they did some of their investigation. I later went to the hospital.
Okay. And did you meet somebody at the hospital?
I did.
Who was that?
Detective Chris Luque.
Okay. And do you know Detective Luque?
Pardon me?
Do you know Detective Luque?
Yes, he's a deputy with the Clark County Sheriff's Office.
All right. And why was he there?
To complete a search warrant for Miss Johnson.
Okay. Did you assist Detective Luque in that process or that procedure, or were you just there for backup?
No, I provided Deputy Luque with the information that I had obtained out at the scene, and then I stood by while he went out and obtained a telephonic search warrant.
Okay. Okay, Deputy Gash, I'm about to hand you a number of photographs, okay? And I would like for you to review each of these photographs and tell the jury if you recognize what's depicted in these photographs. And for the record, the exhibits or photographs I'm handing him are exhibit numbers 10, 11, 12, 13, 18, 19, 42, 43, 44, and 45. Look through them all, one at a time. you recognize what's depicted on those photographs?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and in general, what do they show?
Images of Northeast 82nd Avenue, 289th Street, and also photographs of Miss Johnson's car.
Okay. In regards to the area that it's depicted, Northeast 82nd and Northeast 289, is that the location of the crash, of the scene?
Yes, this is the location.
Okay. And do they appear to be in the same condition as when you were there that morning?
Yes.
Okay. Do they fairly and accurately depict everything that's depicted on there?
I believe they do.
State moves to admit 10, 11, 12, 13, 18, 19, 42, 43, 44, and 45.
Your Honor, as soon as I look at the numbers, make sure they all match up. Your Honor, no objection to admission of documents, or excuse me, exhibits 45, 44, 43, 42, 19, 18, 13, 12, 11, or 10.
They are admitted. Clerk will so note.
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Okay, can you see where you are?
I believe I can.
Okay. If you can, please describe to the jury as we go through each of these photographs what's depicted on there, okay? Anyone see so far? Okay, showing you number 10.
This is a photograph of Northeast 82nd Avenue, taken from north to south.
Okay, approaching what?
289th Street is split, although 289th Street continues on both sides of 82nd Avenue. They don't line up perfectly. This sign here marking 289th Street to the east, and just before this patrol car to the west.
Okay. Showing you number 11. What is this depicting or showing?
A little closer, but of the same image. 289th Street to the east, and you can barely make out the driveway here for 289th Street to the west. Again, southbound on Northeast 82nd Avenue.
Showing you number 12. What does this show?
Again, of the same image, but a few feet closer. 289th Street. We're on 82nd Avenue, facing southbound. 289th Street to the east. And now you can make out more of the entry to 289th Street to the west.
Okay. Showing you number 13. What does that show?
Standing on Northeast 82nd Avenue, and this is 289th Street to the west. We're facing in a southwesterly direction.
All right. And showing you number 18. Is that a similar angle?
It's a similar angle, probably a couple feet more to the west,
Okay.
but again showing 289th Street to the west.
So when you arrived on scene, where in this photograph was the vehicle?
Located just to the west of where my vehicle is, down here in this area here.
Okay. So just south of Northeast 289th Street?
Correct.
Okay, on the west side of
On the west side of the road.
Showing you number 19. You see the photograph? Here.
No, I got it. Sorry.
What does that show?
This shows the just south of 289th Street,
Okay.
facing southbound, 82nd Avenue here.
Okay. And,
And this shows the ditch area and appears to be the pathway that the vehicle traveled
all right,
through the grass.
was this where the vehicle ended up?
No, it was further down. It was
Okay.
further south. It
Down
was,
that area? Okay. All right. So speaking of the vehicle, okay, showing you number 42. What does that show?
that is the back of Miss Johnson's Nissan Altima.
Okay, and where is this photograph taken in relation to, strike that. Was this photograph taken while it was still in the ditch or after it had been moved out?
No, this is well after it had been moved out. This actually appears to be after it was taken off of the first tow truck. And
Okay, but it's that
It's-
vehicle you're talking about, right?
it is. It's sitting on 289th Street and appears to be facing westbound on the west side of 82nd Avenue.
All right. Showing you number 43, what does that depict?
That is the front end of Miss Johnson's Nissan Altima.
From what angle?
Taken from 289th Street, facing southeast.
Okay. And is it taken from the perspective of which side of the vehicle?
That would be the right side of her vehicle or the passenger side.
Front?
Yeah, front,
Thank you.
right front corner.
Sorry, we're doing this for the record, obviously.
Sorry.
Showing you number 44, what does that depict?
Again, the front end of Miss Johnson's Nissan Altima, taken from the left front corner or the driver's front corner.
And showing you number 45.
Again, another image of Miss Johnson's Nissan Altima, taken directly facing head onto it.
Okay, looking at the front hood of her vehicle and the grille?
The hood, the front, where the front bumper should be. The header assembly that it's missing from this area here, and the windshield and the roof line here.
Okay, got it. Have nothing further.
Cross-examine?
Please, Your Honor. Deputy Gush, you've been a law enforcement officer for 25 years.
Just about 25 years, that's correct.
Here and up in Kelso as a reserve.
Yes,
Your primary duties are on patrol, correct?
this is correct.
So what are some of the duties, day-to-day duties of a patrol officer?
Responding from everything from automobile accidents to burglaries to shoplifting to disturbances between people. Just
Whatever comes up.
whatever comes up, whatever they send us to.
And it's all really, your area is North County.
I've got the northeastern corner of the county,
Okay.
yes.
Northeastern corner. You respond to many traffic accidents?
Yes,
What are your duties when you respond to a traffic accident?
to obtain enough information to complete a traffic accident, to ensure the safety of the other motorists on the road, to ensure the safety of the tow operators if they respond, and just to ensure the safety of the other motorists out there.
Who's in charge of a crash scene?
Pardon me?
Who is in charge of a crash scene when you arrive and you're the only law enforcement officer there?
I would be.
You would be. And as part of your duties as a patrol deputy with, this would have been about 2 years ago, so about 23 years of experience at the time, you responded on June 10th, correct?
That's correct.
And you contacted Ms. Johnson
Yes, I did.
in her car and also in the ambulance.
That's correct.
Did she speak to you?
Yes, she did.
Was she willing to speak with you?
She appeared to be, yes.
She wasn't Mirandized, was she?
No, she was not.
And you reached into her purse,
This is correct?
and you took out the 2 baggies,
Correct.
and you suspected that those baggies were methamphetamine,
I did.
and she told you that she was an addict, right?
Yes, she did.
That's her testimony. So you had that, she said she was an addict. She admitted she'd used in the last couple days, right?
Yes, she did.
There was an alleged substance, or a substance you thought to be methamphetamine on the scene.
Yes,
right?
there was.
And her car was where?
In the ditch?
In the ditch. And based on that, you did not contact the DRE, did you?
No, I did not.
Because, as you said, you had no reason to arrest Miss Johnson, right?
No, I did not have any reason to arrest Miss Johnson.
If you had reason, what would you have done?
I would have followed her to the hospital and arrested her at the hospital after she was treated.
Okay. And I know you got dispatched to another call, and I expect it's 2 years ago, so you probably don't remember what that other call was. But could another law enforcement officer have responded to the hospital?
Certainly.
You could have called somebody like Detective Luque?
I don't know if Detective Luque would have been the one to respond. It would have been another patrol officer, more than likely.
Could you have called a DRE?
If one was available,
Okay. Could you have called one, though?
I could have made a request for one. I'm not sure one was available. I can only make the request.
Did you make a request?
No, I did not.
Okay. So after having the alleged substance, after having her statements, being an addict and that she'd used within about, 40 hours, you still found no reason to arrest her?
No, I did not.
Do you remember how you identified Justin?
I believe that Justin provided his name.
Okay. Do you have a specific memory of that, or is it
I'm
just...
sorry, I do not.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Deputy, you testified that you had no reason to arrest Sean Johnson.
Mr. Booth, would you like this?
That's
or-
okay. I think I'm
I think you'll be picked up on the, if you stay at council's
I'm
table, we
fine
should be
if
okay.
if I
I
don't
can hear you.
I've turned this one off.
So the question was, you testified that you had no reason to arrest Sean Johnson at the scene.
No, I had no reason to arrest Miss Johnson at the scene.
Okay. And did you have any reason to request a drug recognition expert?
No, I did not.
When would you request a drug recognition expert to respond to assist?
Had there been a serious injury to someone, or had Miss Johnson been placed under arrest for suspicion of DUI?
DUI what?
Drugs?
Alcohol, DUI drugs?
DUI drugs.
Okay, because you're not qualified to...
I'm not qualified to make that evaluation.
All right. And so in terms of the 2 baggies of meth that you found in Miss Johnson's purse, what did you do with them?
They were seized. Some granules from one of the baggies was field tested, and they were later logged into Clark County Sheriff's Office evidence.
Did you request the substances contained therein to be tested by some other agency?
Yes, I did. I made a request of the Washington State Crime Lab to test those substances further for methamphetamine.
Okay. And that happened sometime after June 10th, 2013, correct?
I believe, yes, it was.
All right. Now, okay, show you the exhibits that have already been entered, these photographs here. Can you look through them and tell the jury if you can identify or point out the location where Justin was found? If they're depicted in any of those photographs.
of the 6 images I was handed, I can possibly point out the approximation of where Justin was found in 3 of those images.
Okay, and let me take those 3 now, pop it on the overhead. Okay. So you've identified exhibit number 13, 18, and 19. Okay, showing you number 13. Where in this photograph was the area that Justin was located?
Approximately here, behind this brush here.
Okay, deeper in?
Deeper in, yeah, it's fairly dense in there at that time of year. Again, the grasses in some of those places were over my head. I'm 6'2". So it was,
Okay, showing you 18. Again,
he was located somewhere back in here, behind this brushy area.
and number 19.
Would be, again, back behind this dense brush here.
Okay.
You leave 19 up for me. I'm going to want 19 if you're done. So. You done?
Nothing further.
Recross.
Thank you, Ron. So her, pardon me. Her car was about here, right?
Correct.
Near those 2 posts? Can you see them?
I don't see the post from where I'm at, but her car was approximately here, the front end of the car, approximately in this area right here.
Okay. Can you lean out a little bit so you can see exactly, so you can describe for the record what exactly it is you're pointing to? What you see there?
289th Street, I'm sorry, this is Northeast 82nd Avenue, facing southbound, and 289th Street would be at our back. And this is a photograph showing the brush on the west side of the roadway, and you can see a little bit of how the pathway of the car as it went into the ditch and came to rest approximately here.
So,
On the west side of Northeast 280, on the west side of Northeast 82nd Avenue,
And
south of 289th Street.
and right where you were pointing, there's a post right there, right?
I see what looks like possibly a T-post.
Okay.
Right here?
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Okay. So, you can sit back down. Thank you, Debbie. So, right ones. So this is number 11. Is it correct that when you got there, your conclusion was that she got sucked into the ditch over here somewhere?
I believe that there were tire marks that was, I don't remember how far up the road, but it was, yeah, it appeared that the car went through the ditch somewhere through here and went into the grassy area off the embankment down here into where the car came to rest.
And your conclusion after going to the scene and walking up and down and taking charge of the scene and ensuring everybody's safety, was it your conclusion that she in fact did get sucked into the ditch?
That she left the roadway and went into the ditch? Yes.
And then she went over 289th
Over the top of 289th Street?
and down into the ditch.
Correct.
And after taking her statements, your conclusion was it's not a crime.
One car accident and vehicle in the ditch.
Okay.
I wasn't there at that time for a criminal investigation.
Okay. Isn't it true that the only thing that changed between that conclusion that it wasn't a criminal investigation and calling folks out was that Justin was discovered?
Yes, that's correct.
No further questions.
Further questions, Mr. Vu?
Just a final question. Were you present when Detective Luque did his investigation with Ms. Johnson at the hospital?
Yes, I was.
I mean, present in the sense of, were you in the same room with them?
Honestly, I don't recall if I
Okay,
don't recall.
that's fine. Nothing further.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached what is probably a good time for our mid-afternoon break. We'll take about 15 minutes, so I'll ask Dorothy to take you back into the jury room. We will reconvene in about 15 minutes. Please leave your notepads in your chairs every time during break. Thank you. State's next expected witness.
Should be outside, the three witnesses that I
Okay.
mentioned, they're here.
All right, we had one of the witnesses, I believe, who's in chair number 7, who had talked about getting to some board meeting in Longview. I haven't, promised him we'll go. I think we're going to need to stretch the time as much as we can, so
Yep,
we'll see if
I would ask that we finish with these three witnesses today.
all right, let's try to do that then.
And Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to reserve the right to recall Deputy Gosh at some point in the future if necessary.
Okay, so Deputy Gosh, you may be called by the defense at some point.
I've already advised him will be available.
Thank you. We'll be in
Thank you, Your
recess.